Okay, so it's a dark day for snooker, in my opinion, when you've got a player of the level of Mark King getting a 5-year ban for match fixing. It's disappointing and it's disheartening. As a former snooker fan, I used to love snooker. I used to be a member of snooker clubs. I used to play. I grew up loving the sport. Loved the sport as a kid. Loved playing it as a teenager and into my 20s. I'm very disappointed in the sport, and I'm very saddened that the sport is going down this direction of match fixing allegation after match fixing allegation and suspension after suspension. And Mark King is not the only player currently suspended or banned. Stephen Lee sticks out to me as one of the most high profile players. He got a 10-year ban, which is basically career over. I think Mark King's career is over unless he is successful in lodging an appeal and the appeal is successful, which will take time because he's been suspended for the best part of 2 years. He's been suspended since the 18th of March last year. There were two matches in question. A match against Joe Perry the month prior to his suspension on the 13th of February 2023. Suspicious betting patterns were noticed in the build-up to the match and during the match. And 2 months prior to that, on the 13th of December 2022, he's alleged to have fixed a match against John Higgins. Now, there is nothing to suggest that Perry or Higgins were aware that these matches were being fiddled by Mark King. Now, one count is for giving inside information for betting purposes to an individual, and the other one is actually for fixing the match for a betting outcome. Now, John Higgins himself has been the subject of match-fixing allegations. He doesn't like that being brought up in press conferences, but it was proven that he did accept bribes to throw matches. They couldn't prove that he fixed any matches or spot-fixed any frames, but he did take some money. That was proven. So John Higgins, could he have been in on the match fix? We don't know. That hasn't been proven in this investigation. But at the same time, we've seen Stephen Lee and now Mark King, two of the highest profile players. There's other players currently under investigation, suspended, and other players banned, including a lifetime ban for a Chinese player who wasn't highly ranked. But the fact that these two players, Stephen Lee and now Mark King, very high profile, experienced professionals who've been professional since the 90s, and in Mark King's case, professional since 1991, he's in his 50s, career over. I cannot see him coming back from this. Even if he does go through the appeals process, that'll be over 2 years he's been out of the game suspended and going through an appeals process. So, for me, it's another dark day for snooker, but I've always said since Barry and Eddie Hearn got involved, the Hearn family involved with the running of the sport, these allegations have gone through the roof. They have. I've had my concerns about the Hearns' involvement for many, many years. It's never sat comfortably with me. And as time has gone on, the amount of allegations, the amount of suspensions and the amount of bans is going up year on year. We've seen so many this year alone. And there have been allegations over, I'm going to say, the last 5 to 6 years, which concern me. We've also had Stuart Bingham banned for 6 months within the last 6 years for breaching the sport's own betting rules. Now, he did admit to that. He got a 6-month ban. And he came back to the sport and rehabilitated himself. He did have a gambling issue. But the fact that between Mark King and Stephen Lee, that's 15 years of total bans and career over for both of them, it's worrying. And these are two of the most experienced players that, on the circuit currently banned. And they're two very good players. On their day, they can beat anyone. And when you've got players like Ronnie O'Sullivan, making his viewpoint quite publicly known about the state of the sport and match fixing, I don't think that helps the situation, but it does highlight that the greatest player potentially of all time, is raising the issue, going, it's rife. Make of that what you will. But yeah, it's a dark day for the sport, and it's not a snooker. I mean, look, I don't often make snooker content for the channel, partly because I've just fallen out of love with the sport, and this is one of the reasons why, the constant match fixing allegations. And it saddens me that a sport I grew up with and I loved and I used to play, and I have mates who play at the lower levels, at amateur and semi-pro level, for me, I've lost love for it. And it's gone. The love for the sport is gone. And it's the culture within the sport is clearly toxic. I mean, it's one of those sports that is ripe for corruption. Same with tennis. Tennis is also another sport that is heavily... There's allegations of fixing in tennis. Same with cricket to a massive extent. They're the three most vulnerable sports, in my opinion, which is so obvious that you can fix. And this is well known. Football's got its own problems. And in fact, every professional sport and amateur sport has got issues. And with the way sports gambling works now, and you look at the sponsorship of snooker, it is heavily reliant on the gambling industry for the sponsorship money. Players, personal sponsors are gambling firms. Tournaments, gambling firms. Now, yeah, we can all argue the pros and cons of tobacco sponsorship back in the day. But since tobacco and alcohol sponsorship to a certain extent, we can argue the pros and cons of that. But here's the thing, when we had the tobacco and alcohol sponsorship, and alcohol still occasionally sponsors the odd event, but when we had the tobacco sponsorship before the tobacco ban on sponsorship, there was not a single hint of a match fixing or a spot fixing allegation. Now, it's almost commonplace to a point where are you sure that the match you are watching or the tournament you are watching doesn't have a thrown frame or a thrown match? And the fact that a player of the standing of Mark King is banned for 5 years, it's worrying. What other champion players, because he's won a ranking tournament, the Northern Ireland Open, what other champion players could potentially be throwing games for money? That is what is deeply concerning here. If Stephen Lee wasn't a warning sign to the rest of the professional circuit, Mark King, I can't see that curing the issue, but I think he's been given a lengthier ban than some of the other suspensions and bans we have seen because of his standing in the game. But we'll see if he appeals, but I think that's career over. But that's enough from me for now. If you are a snooker fan, please place your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think that the fixing problem is far more widespread than the current suspensions and bans of players we've seen? And what can snooker do to clean up itself? Does it need to wean itself off the gambling sponsorship that it is so reliant on and get other sponsors in? Doesn't matter if it's a car company, a video game company, whatever company, a cleaning product company, you name any other corporate entity would be a perfect sponsor. But for some reason, it's heavily reliant on the gambling money, like a lot of other sports right now. And we're seeing the results of that. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts in the comments section below, and I'll have some more content for all of you lovely viewers very, very soon.